This is a CBS News special report.
I'm Rick Jackson in New York. The U.S. Coast Guard confirms the plane has crashed on takeoff from John F. Kennedy International Airport tonight. It's reported to be a TWA 747 bound for Paris, France. Witnesses report an explosion in the Atlantic about 10 miles south of Long Island, New York, around 8:30 this evening. The Coast Guard is currently sending every available rescue unit to that area. I'm Rick Jackson in New York. More later on your late local news and on CBS News Overnight, up to the minute. Stay with us.
This has been a CBS News special report. This is a CBS News special report.
This is a CBS News special report. I'm Rick Jackson in New York. The U.S. Coast Guard is confirming that a TWA 747 jet has crashed off the south shore of New York's Long Island. Flight 800 took off from John F. Kennedy Airport. It was bound for Paris, France. It went down off Mauritius Inlet about 8:30 p.m. More than 200 people are believed to have been on board the craft. The Coast Guard reports spotting life rafts in the water, but as of yet there are no reports of any survivors. Every available rescue craft in the area is being sent to the scene. The Coast Guard says 6 helicopters, 3 Coast Guard cutters, and a Navy P-3 rescue plane are either already there or are on their way. An area spokesman from the fire department says a temporary morgue has already been set up at the scene just in case. More later on your late local news and on CBS News, up to the minute.
This is a CBS News special report.
I'm Rick Jackson in New York. You're looking at live pictures right now of an apparent airplane explosion and crash off the coast of Long Island, New York. The U.S. Coast Guard says there are no survivors of a TWA 747 jet explosion and crash off Long Island, New York. Coast Guard officials say Flight 800 on its way to Paris from JFK exploded shortly after takeoff, bound for Paris earlier this evening. One witness says the plane looked like a fireball diving toward the water with pieces of it falling off. Coast Guard authorities say they already have begun finding bodies in the area. The Coast Guard has 6 helicopters, 3 cutters, and a Navy P-3 rescue plane on the scene. A temporary morgue has already been set up. Again, you're seeing live pictures as we get them from our affiliate WCBS, CBS-owned station here in New York. More later on your late local news and on CBS News, up to the minute.
The additional danger is that they... This morning on CBS, an eerie stillness covers the south shore of Long Island, east of New York City, where a Paris-bound TWA jumbo jet crashed shortly after takeoff. Hello, everybody, from East Monatchis, Long Island. I am Russ Mitchell. East Monatchis is about 40 miles east of Manhattan. Hattie?
Good morning, Russ. I'm Hattie Kaufman in New York. Throughout the night, the waterborne flame served as a silent vigil for the 229 people aboard Flight 800, bound for Paris from New York's Kennedy Airport. Full coverage begins this Thursday morning, the 18th of July.
And welcome back. I'm Russ Mitchell in East Mauritius, New York, I should say. What caused this disaster? There are just so many questions this morning as hope fades that any of the 229 people on board have survived. Here is the latest. A Boeing 747-100 en route to Paris from JFK went down off the southern shore of Long Island, about 50 miles east of Manhattan, just after sunset last night. 212 passengers and a crew of 17 were reported on board. It is believed none has survived. Rescue workers worked through the night recovering wreckage and human remains. Now, the investigation this morning is being led by a task force from the FBI and New York City Police. Witnesses say they heard at least 1 explosion, maybe 2, and then some witnesses say they saw in the sky something that looked like a fireball. The jet had come from Athens, Greece to JFK. It was on the ground in New York for about 3 hours before heading to Paris. 20 minutes later, it vanished from radar screens, and at this point, there is no word if the pilots made a distress call. Jackie Adams has been here throughout the night. She has more on the investigation.
Well, Russ, just in the last 5 minutes, a convoy of New York City police scuba divers drove past here to begin the very grim search for bodies. It's a search that's been extremely frustrating all night. In the darkness, all one could see were the glow of searchlights, helicopters overhead, and trucks belonging to the Suffolk County morgue going by. At last count, the medical examiner's office had recovered 30 bodies, most of them charred and badly burned. Rescuers said their job was made harder by 3 things. The darkness, there was no moon, a 5-mile-long oil slick left by the burning fuel in the fully loaded aircraft, and the water 120 feet deep. Suffolk County Executive Robert Gaffney flew over the scene at about 4 a.m.
It was difficult to see that it's dark, and you can see searchlights playing over the waters. You could see that there were a lot of things floating in and around the water. But it was difficult to see anything more than that, although there were fires burning on the surface of the water.
Compounding the difficulty of the search was the crush of boats in the water, some 20 Coast Guard vessels, as well as the curious, some of whom picked up body parts and debris despite official warnings not to.
If you find anything that's crash-related, either on the beach or in the water or anyplace else, don't touch it, don't do anything with it. It may be part of a chain of evidence that will be necessary later on.
The Coast Guard says that it is technically calling this a rescue operation, a search for survivors, until about 8:30 this morning for about another hour and a half. After that, it will be purely a search for bodies. Bodies which the medical examiner says may contain possible clues, perhaps bomb fragments, perhaps some sort of chemicals, clues as to the possible cause of this terrible crash. Hattie?
Actually, Jackie, there is word this morning that authorities are asking folks who live in this area to be aware that on the beaches, this is pretty gruesome, but pieces of bodies could wash on shore or pieces of planes. Have you heard anything about that at all?
Well, actually, that was something that the Suffolk County executive had been talking about all night. There are a tremendous number of body parts, a tremendous number of pieces of debris from the plane. All of them are potential evidence in this crash. And it stretches, the slick stretches for about 5 miles behind us. And with the current, pieces could turn up anywhere.
Okay, Jackie Adams, thank you very much. Right now, we want to go to Washington, D.C. Jim Hall is chairman of the National Transportation Safety Board. He joined us with the latest. Good morning, Jim.
Normally, this flight would have had about...
Jim, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Good morning, sir. I can hear you just fine. Good morning. Tell me the latest. What do you know thus far?
Well, as we normally do with major aviation accidents, we have launched one of our multidisciplinary GO teams from our Washington, D.C. office. I anticipate they will arrive at the accident site within the hour, and we will begin piecing together the various factual information that's necessary for us to determine exactly what happened to Flight 800.
Of course, a crucial part of the investigation, I would think, would be finding those coveted black boxes. How optimistic are you that you're going to be able to find them?
Well, I'm very optimistic. I can't put a time frame on it, but the black boxes, of course, have pingers on them that will help identify them if they are underwater. So we hopefully will be able to recover them, return them to our offices here in Washington that are directly behind me, read those out, and find out information that will lead us down the road of either this being an aviation accident or a criminal act.
Jim, of course, there is a lot of speculation this morning that there was criminal activity involved here, that this was, in fact, an explosion or a bomb. I know nothing has been determined yet, but what is your take on that? Any thoughts on that at all at this point?
Well, the thoughts are that it's very important that all the agencies responsibly proceed to do our job for the taxpayers and determine what happened. We have, in a number of instances, worked with the FBI and other authorities where there was a thought that a bomb or explosion had occurred when we found out later that it was not the result of a criminal act. So we have all got to coordinate to get all the information together as quickly as possible so we'll know what we're dealing with. And as we do in all of our investigations, as we have evidence and information that is factual, that will be presented to the American people.
Okay, Jim Hall, the National Transportation Safety Board. Now you've got a busy day ahead of you. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us. We appreciate it.
Shirley, thank you.
And right now we want to go to our CBS News correspondent Bob Orr, aviation expert, safety expert, also joining us from Washington. Bob, what can you tell us?
Well, Russ, you heard the chairman of the NTSB say that within the hour the GO team should get to the crash scene. And over the next several hours, we may get
This is a CBS News special report. Dan Rather reporting from CBS News Worldwide headquarters in New York. We're expecting President Clinton in the White House briefing room momentarily. He is to talk about the fireball in the night, the crash of TWA Airlines Flight 800. A short while ago, the Attorney General of the United States, Janet Reno, said the FBI was not prepared to declare the crash an act of terrorism, but is pursuing all leads. Now, the Associated Press quotes a law enforcement official speaking on condition of anonymity that he was told by the FBI that based on eyewitness accounts, including some from the Air National Guard, that investigators are, quote, leaning more towards the possibility that it was a bomb that caused the plane to explode, unquote. Investigators were on the scene this morning off the coast of Long Island, anchoring a barge for their base of operations. They cautioned boaters and beachgoers to stay clear of the area and any pieces of wreckage. The Boeing 747-100 series plane, one of the oldest and most dependable of the jumbo jets, was manufactured around 1971. It was bound from New York's JFK Airport to Paris. It exploded and crashed into the ocean off the coast of Long Island, New York, about 10 minutes after takeoff, about 8:40 last night. It was still in its early climb. It was at about 800 feet when something went terribly wrong. The plane should have been, if it were making a perfect ascent to where it was supposed to be, would have been higher, but it was roughly about 8,000 feet. There were 229 people on board. There are no known survivors. About 100 bodies have been recovered at last report. None were wearing life preservers. Many of the bodies were badly burned. Speculation, nothing more than that, speculation all night and this morning centers on either a catastrophic failure of some sort or deliberate terrorism. On that score, it should be noted that the plane had arrived at JFK just a few hours earlier from Athens, Greece. Now, Athens, Greece had been cited as recently as March 22nd for, quote, inadequate security measures. Again, though, the cause of the crash is still under investigation and the cause is undetermined. Many residents of Long Island and those in pleasure boats and even a National Guard plane in the air at the time all reported seeing variations of the same thing. What appeared to be a red dot turning into a large fireball and then plunging into the sea. And very soon it was scenes such as this that were being viewed with the wreckage aflame on the surface of the ocean. Now, Russ Mitchell is standing by on Long Island. Russ?
Dan, Coast Guard officials are still trying to check out a report that a Coast Guard cutter heard a mayday last night just before the crash. Now, at this point, they don't know if that mayday, in fact, came from the pilot of Flight 800, but the investigation continues. Now, right now, Coast Guard divers are still out looking for wreckage and human remains. As you said, Dan, so far 100 bodies have been recovered. There have been 2 claims of responsibility, we have been told, but the State Department says both of those claims are not credible. Investigators told me just a few minutes ago there is absolutely at this point no reason to believe that any of the 229 on board Flight 800 has survived. And Dan, I spoke with several residents of Long Island this morning and they all say the same thing. They say they heard what sounded like a firecracker or 2 firecrackers. Then they looked out their window or went outside in their front lawn and there was a fireball. They also all tell me, Dan, they didn't get much sleep last night.
Russ Mitchell on Long Island. Now, Russ referred to Attorney General Janet Reno indicating that there have been 2 calls claiming responsibility for what had happened. The Attorney General made clear at her briefing this morning that those 2 calls were received after the disaster had been reported publicly, and of course that is one of the reasons, there are others, but one of the reasons that they are in the early going being discounted. But let us pause, and because we can't emphasize this too much, too often, and that is that the investigation of what caused this crash and who, if anybody, was responsible for it is in the very early stages. And while there, of course, is going to be speculation, in the world as it is today, it's unrealistic to say, well, no one should speculate about anything. There's going to be speculation, and the speculation at the moment does center on the possibility, the 2 we mentioned, Number one, that something could have gone wrong aboard the aircraft itself, who knows, something in the cargo, something of that sort, or an act of terrorism. But it may be a while before investigators have even an indication of which way this is going to go. One reason they're picking up that debris, of course, is that the debris will tell them quite a bit. If it was an act of terrorism, they may be able to tell it reasonably quickly once they investigate the debris. On the other hand, if it was something inherent in the aircraft itself, they may be able to tell that too. Now, we're waiting for President Clinton to appear in the White House briefing room. We're told that he had taken a telephone call, but now he's ready, so let's go to the White House briefing room.
I'd like to say a few words about the crash last night.